Welcome to the Be More You podcast.
We're your hosts, Mon
and Stefan.
And this is a space where we want you to be more like you
and less like everyone else.
Enjoy this episode.
We're good.
Okay.
So I'll start.
Yeah.
Today we're here with Jess. How are you, Jess?
I'm alright, thank you.
Solid intro.
Should I do that again?
No. We're rolling.
So I'm really new to introing. This was
mate,
did I intro
nailed that.
yesterday?
Yeah, kind of. I don't really know what
So
it was.
normally I intro and Mon goes, that's crap. And then
I do not, you liar.
I can see it in your eyes.
Anyway, welcome, Jess.
Thank you.
To the Be More You podcast. We're really happy that you're here. We were just touching base before about like what we want to talk about. So we're going to give you the mic to just tell us a bit about yourself, what you've been up to lately and what's got you excited at the moment.
Oh yeah, okay, cool.
That's 3 questions in one.
It
But
is
anyway,
3 questions.
Pick any.
And as I said, I feel like I might ramble, so you guys, we need like a little like Jess wrap it up kind of thing. But yeah, okay, I'll try and summarize myself. So yeah, I'm Jess. I am a meditation and yoga teacher and a business owner. So I've got Good Folk Yoga and Remedy Lane, which is on Myers Street in Geelong. And where do I start? I mean, how far back are we going here?
Let's start with, all right, so you've got Good Folk Yoga. How did that come about? What's the story behind Good Folk?
Well, so Good Folk came about quite just in a turn of luck, really. So I'd been teaching for a couple of years in Geelong at Yoga 213 and at Wonder Yoga. And I just had an opportunity through some friends, like some mates that owned a cafe in East Geelong. Shout out to Ange and Jacko at Common People. And they, just through a friend or a connection of theirs through the coffee industry, put me in touch with the guys that owned the beach house. And they'd just recently taken the space over and they were renovating it and had this huge area upstairs that they wanted someone to run yoga classes in. And I was like, are you joking? Like, this is unbelievable. Like, so my background, like, I've got a business management degree, so I'd always, and a lot of family members own businesses, so I'd sort of, in the back of my mind, always thought, like, it would be amazing to own my own studio and work for myself and teach for my own space and my own sort of vibe. But to be honest, the initial reaction from me was like, I don't think I can do that. Like, there was like a deep belief of like, I think I can, but there was also so much doubt around, because I'd only been teaching for a couple of years. I just had, a lot of negativity around like, I don't know if I can do it. And in the end, I think what made me jump into it was like, well, if I don't do it, someone else is going to do it, and I'll kick myself if I look back and go, oh shit, that would have been such an amazing opportunity. So I just, and then once I actually started really thinking about what Good Folk meant and what I wanted to really create and give people or offer people, once I started fleshing that out, then I was like, nah, I want to do this. Like, I really believe in this. And the whole time it's been about getting the right people on board. Like, I'm very much someone that, like, I don't care about your yoga credentials. I want to know, like, are you a good person? I don't care if you've been teaching for 10 years. Like, it's more about, if you've got good intentions, if you're a good intentioned person and, you know, you're honest and reliable and I can trust you with our community. And so we've pulled together, a really great crew of people. And I think that's also how I kind of initially sort of deflected it a bit. I was like, I haven't been teaching for that long, but I've got all these amazing teachers around me. So it was very much about like bringing together a group of people that all offer something very different too. And I think that also sets us apart in what we offer. I've never wanted to create something that's very sort of cookie cutter and every teacher delivers the exact same thing.
Yes.
I think because I had such a drive for it to be an inclusive space, to me then it meant that having teachers from sort of different backgrounds that taught in different ways and offered different things, and, you know, really our classes are so, you could go to a flow class with like an Angus compared to like a leash, and they're completely different. And I think, I don't know, to me that makes it feel like it's a space that is you know, you don't have to be this particular, like, and even in the way, like, you know, some of the girls dress really like eclectic, and then some of the boys are real surfy. Like, it's deliberately been created so that it's like you can literally be whoever you want to be in this space. So that's a bit of a nutshell, I guess, of how Good Folk started. And then we're in a new space now. So with the beach house, those guys were awesome to deal with. And then obviously with good old COVID came along, and it obviously created many issues for hospitality venues, but they ended up deciding to take the upper level back over and create like a more like a bar functions kind of space. So we then had to go and like find a rental in Geelong, which was, we didn't have a whole lot of notice. So we had to go, and I think I looked at like 15 properties in like 2 days, and there was not, like, it was the only one that was decent, and someone else had applied for it, and we were like, oh no, we're going to miss out on, like, what else are we going to do? And it's funny how things work out. We got a call the next day, and the offer from the previous person had fallen through, and so we took on the lease.
It's a great spot.
It's a great spot. It's funny, initially I was worried it was too close to other yoga
There's a lot of yoga studios around there,
But it's actually, I think it's been fine. I was worried about that initially, but I think the spot's really good, and we're next to that big car park, which people love, and it's got great frontage onto the street, which we didn't have down at the beach house. So yeah, it's working all right. Obviously COVID has thrown many a spanner in the works, but we're still there.
I love like that whole thing with like that's what you said about teachers and everyone just being themselves with it, because I've always looked at teaching, because it's such a hard thing to do to get consistent. I always looked at studios and I'm like, how do you keep consistency across the board?
Mm-hmm.
And because Lance and I had thought about that for so long, it's like, how do you get consistency across the board? And I'm like, the only way that makes any sense to me is to just have everybody be themselves and live within who they are, and have create the framework where everybody can do whatever the hell they want within
if you give
it.
them the trust and let them like really, because there aren't a lot of studios around that let you do that.
No.
And like I found that hard when I was teaching for different studios, that like I also had like a little group on the side that I was teaching, like some mates. I was teaching down at a friend's like bottle shop. It was hilarious. There was like 8 of us in this little back room at Bottles and Barrels. So our mate Cal let us use that space for a bit, which was awesome.
I used to work with Cal 10 years ago.
Oh, he's a cracker.
He's a great guy.
We lived with him for a while, and so he let us use that space, and we'd have beers afterwards, and it was heaps of fun. But I just thrived in that environment where it was like, I can do whatever I want. And I always felt, teaching for studios, I mean, obviously there's got to be a little bit of like consistency. So to an extent, I think our consistency is more around all of the teachers are very inclusive, they're all very friendly, they make you feel welcome, so there's that familiarity, and that's why a lot of studios do have that more structured, like, you can't do this, you can do this. It's to create familiarity so that people feel really comfortable. But I think we've still got that to an extent, but then once you're in the class, the way that the actual like the sequence is put together and what they talk about can be completely but I think that's cool, because each of the teachers have such a different background. Like an Ollie, like he's got interest in more like the strength and mobility stuff, and he's a surfer, so he'll talk more to that kind of stuff.
I did a few of his classes last week.
It's
so strong and different, and
you'll learn something completely different compared to like a Leash who's got that more, like she's studying shiatsu, so like some like Chinese medicine sort of stuff, and she'll weave a lot of that oriental kind of theory throughout what she does, and hers are a lot more dancey and flowy, and so it's kind of like, I think it's cool. I think you can learn different stuff from different teachers when you give them a chance to just be themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I did a couple of Leisha's classes actually. I did one of her mellows.
Oh, did you?
I actually went to do one of her yins last week, but it was from winter, and was talking about winter, and I was like, I can't do this in spring. I'm sorry, Leish.
Let me break away from winter already. God damn it.
But she's great. No, everyone is so good there. So good. And it was like pumping last time we came in.
And I was so busy just before that last lockdown. God damn it. Like, you just get this little run on, and because we're so new, like we only opened in February of last year, Good Folk, so we were open for 6 weeks before the first lockdown hit. So it's like, you try and build a business, or you try and build a community, and you're just in and out, in and out. Like it's just been, pretty rough. But we're still here, so it's like if we can get through that, then surely the next couple of years are going to be nice and cruisy. I
Is
shouldn't
this
have
too
said
much?
that.
I don't even know what it is.
Totally
Everyone slam your face down.
No, but it's awesome. I think like I haven't obviously been to the studio yet.
Yeah, you
but
gotta come visit,
Yeah,
girl.
I will definitely. But like the whole what you're talking about teachers and stuff, I think that is a really cool aspect to come in from, because as somebody who's either new to yoga or whatever, piquing a person's interest in what they're curious about, if they are a surfer and they want to like delve into that, there's someone that actually specializes in that area
Yeah.
and that field. Whereas when you go somewhere where it's like, this is
Everyone's the
this is
same.
like
Yeah.
everybody's robotic, do this,
Yeah.
do that, it's kind of like you don't have that freedom to just like explore
Totally.
and be curious.
Yeah.
And isn't that the whole point of yoga?
Well,
just to
that's
like
exactly
explore
right.
and be curious?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you come to an expiry date with places where if it's too
Yeah.
rigid, because then you're like, oh, I've got everything I can from this, because everything's exactly the same. Whereas when you have the freedom to be able to go to different people's things, like I learned a little bit from Ollie this
and
week.
you just keep picking up different little bits and pieces,
Yeah.
and then you implement that in your life, and then you start teaching different things, and it just, yeah, that's the cool thing about teaching yoga, isn't it? Like, you learn new things, and then you go, oh, you learn something in someone else's class, and you're like, oh, I hadn't thought of it like that, and you might go and do your own studies
Yeah.
on it, and then, and then you live it in your own life, and then you come back and you might teach it in a slightly different way. But if you're not given that opportunity to like spread your wings and explore stuff, then it's really like, I mean, it's still yoga, but it's, I don't know, to me it's a bit more of a watered down version, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think it's good when you go to a class and like what the instructor says or teacher says, like you actually do take that and start implementing it into your life, because it makes sense. It's like, it's not just for the classroom. Like, how do I apply that lesson or that one saying or quote or whatever to my life? Whereas sometimes I'll leave a class and just be like, I didn't really get anything out. Like, I move my body, great, but like the teachers that I just gravitate towards are the ones that'll say something and it's got me thinking.
And it sticks, yeah.
When I leave, I'm like, oh, that's what it means when I'm sitting at the traffic lights and I'm practicing breathing, like bringing that awareness. So I think that's really important. Like having a bit more depth than just knowing the poses or the sequences.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Rich from Wonder, he said to me, I think Sally actually said it to me, but Rich was like, he's like, anybody can teach yoga. The asanas, the shapes. He's like, if it's when you know what you're taught, like what you're saying that's true to you, that's when you're a good teacher. Which,
Yeah.
I mean, it was the way it was said was so simply, but it was one of those things I was like, oh,
And I think
I should have thought of that. Like,
And I think when you're practicing with a teacher that is not necessarily teaching from their own experience, I think you can feel that too. So I think it is
Yes.
important to have
It's the
teachers
relatability factor. Like people want...
and the honesty,
Yeah.
knowing that they are like, they're genuinely talking from their life and their experiences is so important, I think, and people feel that, if it's not real, you can feel that, I think.
I constantly struggle with this as a teacher because I'm a really new yoga teacher. So new.
You've got a bit of
fresh.
experience under your belt. Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Wait, how long? Yeah, you've been teaching for what, like most
Since
of
the
this
start
year?
of this year,
Yeah.
since January.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it's so different because I taught Pilates for 3.5 years before, or 3 years before that, just over 3 years before that. And so like the moving of people around the room was easy, but I was so comfortable in that space by then because I was like, I don't need to say anything. I know all the shapes. I know how to hold space for a group of people, and I think I know where people's boundaries are to like push them. As soon as I started teaching yoga, and because I was so, like, I'd held myself off for a long time, once I started, I was like, I wasn't admitting how much I really wanted to do this. It was terrifying. That's why I want to say, how freaking hard was it to open us? That must have been so challenging after 2 years.
Yeah, totally. Well, you can imagine, if you're 9-10 months into teaching,
The end of next
you
year.
imagine, like it really did challenge me, and I honestly nearly didn't do it. Like I can remember having going and meeting the guys from Beach House, and like starting to work through it all, and like I love challenging myself, so I was really excited about the like launching the business, and more the business side of things was like really exciting. And then there was this fear of just like
like imposter syndrome, like who are you
absolutely.
to open up?
Who the fuck are you to think that you can come in and open a studio? Because most people that open studios have either been teaching for 20 years or they've got, like, I mean, that's generally they've been teaching for a long time. So that was definitely something that that held me back. But I just jumped in, and jumped on top of that fear, because that's definitely been something that's like recurring for me, is that like that little bit of like negative kind of self-talk that just like pulls you back down, but I can honestly say like most of the time I'm able to like step up over that, but it was super challenging. Like I had so much anxiety like in the lead up to the opening. I was like fuck, but it all came down to being too worried about what other people were going to think, you know, and and that's still something I still work through and have, you know, trouble with these days, but I think the awareness of it is such a big part of it, to notice that that's happening and be like, it doesn't matter what other people think. If you're really doing something for the right reasons, then you can, I think, push through.
You go.
I couldn't help but think when you said noticing that happening, the meditation course that we did with Steph.
Yeah, amazing.
How much did that change everything, doing that mindfulness-based stillness course for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It was, so I did mine back in, like Feb of this year.
Yeah.
And prior to that, just to touch, I guess, on like meditation for me, like I had been teaching it. I did a training 2 years ago with Steve Ross, who does a lot of stuff with Yoga 213, and he's like the coolest dude. Have you heard of him?
No.
Oh, he's amazing. So he was like, must be 80 something or 70 something, and he was a musician, and he played like in Fleetwood Mac at some point, travelled around the world. He was like a proper rock star. And then he, at 18, quit all of that and went and lived in India as a monk for 7 years.
Wow.
And never wanted to come back. And then part of his like teachings from his teacher was like, you need to go back and spread this message. And so I got to spend a week with him up in Byron, and that was total game changer. So that was sort of the first big step for me in terms of the meditation practice, and I sort of stuck with it for quite a while after that, but then it dropped off. And Steve sort of, he was funny, you know, Steph was like so structured, and I love that, so structured, and so like everything we learned, you know, all the science and all the understanding the nervous system, and I love having all of that knowledge, whereas Steve's was more just meditating. I literally just meditated for hours every day and went out and did qigong in the fields, and we like looked like this cult, like standing out in these fields doing this like weird qigong. It was honestly, it was so amazing. But Steph's was definitely, I've gotten more out of that, and been a lot more, like I've been daily, non-negotiable daily practice since Feb, and feels so good. How do you feel after it?
So the way that she structured the course was incredible, because it was, I'm going to use the word dry in a sense that it was just like dot point and I'm reeling off as much information as I can for you. But within just sitting there and watching it, I can't remember what was happening in my life specifically at that point, but those Thursday nights ended up me being like, I'm going to have some clarity after this, so I'm really tired. Thursday was the end of my week actually, so it was like my Friday. Yeah. And every week went there just because she covered so much information. So many more dots were put together in my head.
The amount of like penny drop moments.
Yes,
like, oh my God, this makes so much sense.
I'm doing this right now. Yeah. Like, this is what's happening right now. Yeah, I just think that style of meditation, I always teach it before classes.
Yeah.
I just think it's so approachable for people. I've been myself, I started practicing the mantra-based meditation again, the 22 minutes twice a day. I was like, I need more structure with all the chaos that's been happening around me. I was like, let's implement some real structure to try and move forward. And it's been really good for me. But do you feel this when you teach meditation in a class? I'm more present doing that than I am in any other meditation in any other time of my life ever. Mm-hmm. How wild is it? You mean
more so than when you're just doing meditation yourself? Yeah. I remember Ollie saying that to me once as well. He was like, I'm just like in this like really crisp. See, I would say my own practice is definitely more like in the meditation zone for me than teaching. But that's interesting.
It's wild. It's like I'm not even speaking though.
Mm-hmm. It just sort of comes out.
It just comes out, and then because it's all, I remember Ryan, because I did Ryan's mentorship earlier this year. He said about always speaking from experience, and I was like, that really I think it resonates with everybody, but it really hit the nail on the head for me, because I was so self-conscious about teaching, and I just felt like a fraud, and I was like,
I don't know
how to do this.
Still have days like that.
Same.
Honestly, still have days like that. Like especially if there's like and this is just being totally honest, but even if there's like another teacher in the class,
Yeah.
I get that imposter thing, and I'm like, fuck, like, do I know enough? Like, yeah, can I, like, what am I going to teach?
Yeah,
Like,
having a panic attack at the front of the room. Yeah.
Oh, totally. That's still like a weekly thing.
Yeah.
So I wonder whether that will ever go away or whether it's just part of who we are. And whenever I have newer teachers, you know, having chats with them and giving them advice or doing like little workshops with them and stuff, I always say to them, like, I think nerves are a good thing. I think it means that you really care. But then you just got to work out how to harness the nerves so that they don't rattle you too much. I can still remember my sister and my boyfriend will laugh so hard at this, but the first class I taught at 213, so I was teaching the community class, so it's just like a free class for the community. And I was so nervous, I couldn't leave the yoga mat. Like, I literally couldn't step off the mat. And like, I was like that for weeks. Like the first probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 classes I taught, but that first one I was like a deer in the headlights, and I honestly couldn't move off the yoga mat. And they were all people I knew. It's like, what? It was like my sister, a couple of good mates.
That's
my
almost
boyfriend.
worse though.
Do you reckon?
I think it is. Like, I remember my first Pilates class ever. I fucking yelled the whole time. I was
You're a
like,
loud voice.
no, and I've got a loud voice anyway. I'm like raspy in a class. I'm like, what did you think? Like an 8 p.m. hot Pilates class, screaming at everybody. And after class, I was like, that was the most anxious 45 minutes of my life. But now in that same mentorship, like Ryan said, this thing is like, teach to the nerves, and that always stuck with me because I was like, oh, so it's like, yeah, the nerves are a good thing. How do you teach to that? Like, how do you harness that or to move forward with it? And I remember when I taught that mellow at Good Folk and you were in the class, I had a fucking meltdown at the front. Like the whole time too, and I was like...
You hit it very well.
And then in the class, you're like, what are you talking about, mate? You're fine. And I'm like, what?
People genuinely don't notice. And I think I realise that now too, that if there are nerves, you just kind of go, well, I know that most people don't pick up on that. So you're almost just... Sometimes I think another good tool is to try to convince yourself that it's excitement. Like, I sometimes try to like flip it when you're starting to feel like a bit like anxious and wound up. I use that all the time. I'm like, no, I'm just excited. I'm just really excited. You know, and try and sort of put a bit more of a positive spin on it. Because if you're like, oh fuck, I'm anxious, I'm stressed, like I'm wound up, that doesn't help either.
No.
That just perpetuates the whole thing.
My lips like start quivering and shit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, full shakes. And it's funny, like 99% of people would not notice that.
No, they
funny?
wouldn't. It was
There's
really
a lot
funny.
of people out there just faking it till they make it.
Yeah, like, oh, I never... Like, Monday morning, I, for the first time ever, didn't teach breath to movement for the whole class.
What did you teach?
I still taught a flow, but I slowed it down, and I've been... Even when I was slowing it down before, though, I'd still count all the breaths out with everybody. But I was like, more space. Like, let's teach to more space.
Oh, I like that.
Also, I had no reference point for how long things took, though. So that was interesting. It was fine. Nobody noted. Like, I spoke to a girl after the class, and it went really well. Like, I really enjoyed it. It was just, for me, I was like, looking at my watch going, I just don't know how long this is going to take here. I feel good in the middle of this, but I don't know if I've got 15 minutes.
10 minutes over.
Are we 15 minutes under? I don't know. It would have been about 20 minutes over, I think, by then. But no, I shortened it, and it went really well. But I was talking to a girl that was in there. She's a new teacher. And I was like, I just had no reference point in that class. She's like, I love that class. I'm like, I was like, thank you. I really enjoyed it. However, I was like, it was just bizarre not understanding, because teaching, that's the other funny thing about teaching yoga. There's no timers or anything.
Really... I check the iPad though. Do you check the iPad? Although that can become distracting too if you do that too much.
So so Hugh showed me his Apple Watch for teaching yin. And I was like, I'm going to get an Apple Watch, because I hated looking at my phone in class. I hated the timer, all these things. I was like, let's just get an Apple Watch. So this guy that trains me, I was on a call to him talking about training and all this stuff. And he's like, oh, you got an Apple Watch? I'm like, yeah, I got it for the timer. And he jaw dropped. He's like, that is like the best technology you can buy right now. I was like, yeah, timer's pretty good too. He's like, that's a really expensive timer. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I've been using that, and that's really good.
And it looks cool.
Yeah.
You gotta look the goods.
can't. It's weird. I've never worn one. I can't wear it. But one downfall didn't realize Siri was on. And I was teaching a class at 6 a.m. I was like, inhale, halfway lift, exhale, fold forward, inhale, sweep the arms up towards the ceiling, Urdhva Hastasana. As I said that, Siri went, sorry, I didn't get that. I was like, oh, and everyone looked at me and I was like, oh my God. And I like took it off and threw it on the ground. I was like, I'm so sorry.
I had my phone in once, and you're right, using the timer on your phone's not ideal in yin.
Yeah.
I was teaching a class at Cotton On actually, and the timer, I didn't realise I was using like the countdown timer, so the buzzer went off and it was up full volume, and we're in yin. But then I accidentally I didn't realise I pressed restart, and it fucking did it again. Did it again 4 minutes later. I was like, everyone's gonna think I'm an absolute spud.
It's so, and it's funny because you've got like, yeah, I'm so loud, and especially in yin, like I'm just so like just moving is troublesome for me at times. I'm just gangly and yeah, but it's funny because like I notice this so much, and I think it's a funny thing with yoga. Like people come into a studio think I've got to be quiet, I've got to have my shit sorted, I've got to already know how to do this. It's like this really, I think it happens in health and fitness anyway. You go to a gym, that's why you see the new guy walking around or girl walking around like a puppy dog going, fucking, what do these machines do? But it's really interesting to notice it with yoga, and I think it's a testament to the studio and the space and the community that you create when you can break like little cycles like that don't seem like much, but it's really impactful on people when they walk in and feel like they've got to be quiet, they feel like they've got to whisper, they feel like they can't drop their phone or fuck up because it's not allowed, because it's this sacred space. It's like, yeah, it is that sacred space for everybody to be within themselves in that space. So it's really, it's been interesting for me to walk into, because I find that fighting with my head too. It's like, you've got to lower your voice, Stefan, or you've got to do this, you've got to do that. It's like, no, you've got to just be unapologetically you and authentic in that way. Otherwise, you're not helping anybody at that point.
No, if you're not in alignment, you're right. If you're not like living your day or your week in alignment with who you really are, then like not only does that feel shit, but it's also like, I don't know, it just doesn't create like a great vibe for the world. If everyone was doing that, you know, it's not creating like a positive energy out there. So I think you've got to be able to come in and be yourself, and I hope that people feel that at Good Folk. Like I think they definitely do. Yeah. Like we've got such a, like this morning I had two members that are in their 70s with these ladies. They've been doing yoga for like 15 or 20 years. They're not that mobile, but like they get by. We give them blocks and we, you know, help them out. And then I had like a couple of girls that'd be like early 20s, had a guy that was in his 40s, and like, you know, some of them are touching their toes and some of them can do handstands, and then others are like barely able to like move around. But the way that we try and teach, so that's for a mellow, we try and teach that so that literally anyone could come to that and feel comfortable, because there's options offered and there's all these different bodies in the room and everyone's kind of doing different things. And so I think people that say, because you hear that so often, people think like, oh, yoga, you've got to like be able to do a handstand or be really flexible. But like if you're really flexible, you probably shouldn't be doing a lot of yoga. You should be in the gym. Like it really, whereas people that are quite stiff and do a lot of running and fitness, they're the ones that probably need the slowing down and the stretching and the yin. Like that's probably more what they need.
And what did you, because I know, like you've mentioned this to me before, how Mellow's like your signature class there now. And I find Good Folk so interesting because you feel so calm when you walk in there, because it's like this beautiful space. You've got actually the wellness rooms and everything, which is rad too. Yeah. And then, but I'm like, the world, I feel like everybody's beginning to lean towards more mellow and more yin practices. However, it's just like everybody's just gravitated to this one little spot to just get all of it at once. Like, do you know how that happened, or did that just come about, or?
As in with the mellow.
With the mellow and everything
Well, yeah, we deliberately, because so many of the other studios are quite focused on more the fitness element. And I mean, you can still get fit coming to our classes, but that's not sort of how we market it or how we sort of explain it to people. But yin yoga has been one of the most pivotal things for me and my health and my well-being, like being that and sound healing was so pivotal in getting me out of like a really shitty corporate job. I'm not really shitty, that's mean. Some of my old colleagues are probably it was a brilliant workplace, but it absolutely ran me, or I let it run me into the ground, like completely, like no awareness of how unhealthy I was in my body. And it was yin and that slowing down stuff that really made me be like, oh holy shit, I've got to change something. And you were similar, weren't you? Yin was like,
yin
you
changed everything for me. Like when Upstate opened the studio in Balaclava, and I'd never really done yin before that, and I had to do teachers' classes to just check it out and to make sure the classes were running for it and everything. And I was like, what is, like, because the studio that they took over up there, it was like 80% yin, like all of the members were just coming for yin. So they opened, and it was just like every yin class every night was like packed, and everyone else was like, what is all this other stuff you do? And I'm like, this is such a weird dynamic, I've never even done this before. And then did it a lot then, but then it was really Lucy Jarvis. When I started doing her classes, everything changed, because she taught to Chinese medicine a lot, and I'd had a lot of experience with a kinesiologist, with Stacey, and just all these things that I could feel that she was talking about in my body that were happening, I could feel it, like I could feel it energetically. And because I was seeing Stacey a lot, it was like supporting that really well, because I'd released the blockages with Stacey, the energy blocks with Stacey, and then I'd come in and do yin, and I'd just feel those channels flowing more freely throughout myself. And then I'd also feel when things were stagnant as well, which I'd never experienced before. And I was like,
it's powerful, isn't it?
What is this thing?
Really understanding your body, and not just physically, but energetically. And that sounds like, a lot of people would think like that sounds woo-woo and bullshit, but it's not. Like Chinese medicine is like acupuncture. There's such amazing research now. Like I saw a gynecologist, I won't talk about that, but I saw we're going too deep.
I mean, it's your space, so...
I saw a gynecologist, amazing guy in Geelong, but he recommended acupuncture for, like, issues with menstrual cycles. So, like...
Who was the acupuncturist?
So Hannah at Acupuncture West Coast, she's awesome. She's so good. But yeah, so there's, like, surgeons out there recommending Chinese medicine. So it works. They don't really understand how it works, because it's energy, and how can you do research on that? It's really hard. But in terms of it impacting people positively, there's all this research coming out now. So it's really cool. But I was similar, like, so it was yin yoga, and then I saw a kinesiologist, that total game changer, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And then also an acupuncturist up in Melbourne.
Yes.
And it was all around the time that I was working in this job. I worked in like sports marketing, so I was
marketing.
Yeah. But with athletes. Like it was like, it was a fun workplace. I sort of in the end realised that I was chasing someone else's dream. Like it was, everyone wanted my job. Like I had all these people that would email every week, like lawyers being like, I want to be a sports agent. So I was like a manager for athletes. So I would work with like a netballer or a cricketer or an Olympic athlete, and then we had AFL as well, and we would like negotiate all their contracts. And
that's a pretty cool job.
I know, and so like I kept going with it, and I like climb the ladder, and thought that was what I should be doing. And I was living up in Melbourne, and did it for years, and like went to all the cool parties, went to the Olympics, like got flown first class to Germany for like a photo shoot with Adidas, and it was cool, like it was fun, and it completely burnt me into the ground. I sort of let it. What I'm realizing is like it just wasn't, that job wasn't for me. Like there are other people that would have done that job and been able to like put better boundaries in, but I just got so swept up in the climbing of like getting up in the in the business, and I eventually like got a promotion and was earning more money and bought a new car, and I remember just being like, what the fuck, like
was there an actual point where you were just like, what?
And I was unwell too, like it was starting to realise that like I actually just wasn't listening to my body. Like I was seeing doctors for all different things. I had gut issues, I had cycle issues, I wasn't sleeping, my hair was falling out, all these like seemingly random things, but it was stress. All of it was stress. And I can remember I remember reading this book someone at work gave me, and it was Rushing Woman Syndrome. And I was like, I don't fucking need to read this. I remember I was like, oh, thanks. I don't really think I need this. And then within the first like chapter, I was like, fuck, I am wound up and I am stressed. But I can admit that now, and I'm so much more aware of it now. But back then I felt like if I admitted that I was stressed, it meant that I wasn't handling the workload.
Yep.
And I just had so much to prove. Like, I've always been.
Did you feel like being a woman in that kind of industry as well?
Yeah, mainly males in the business, but also just a real cutthroat kind of environment. Like, it was like literally there were, you know, kids lined up down the street wanting to work in this industry, because sport's relatively hard to get into, and I was just lucky it was just through like a family friend. So I kept putting up with it, you know, oh, this is, you know, it's all going to work out, it's all going to be good. And then just realising, like, yeah, I'm, one, really unhappy, but also really unwell in my body. And then started, kinesiology, acupuncture, and the yin. And I was practising at Yoga 213 up in Richmond.
With Hugh?
Yeah. I went to a few Hughs back in the day. And going to a sound healing was one of the most...
Really?
It just felt like it just put me back in my body. Like, it made me realise how it's like almost this just... like disassociation of just not even being aware of like physical sensations in your body. Like, I was so disconnected from all of that, and then it was just this process of getting back into your body, you know, feeling sensation and like noticing like I'd literally just ignored all the signals in my body for years. And I think a lot of people don't realize, like, people don't understand that like stress doesn't have to be that you work this really high stress corporate job. Stress can be anything. It can be financial, it can be emotional. If you're like stewing on something or really like thinking about something and it's on your mind a lot, like your body can read that as stress. And so I think it's important to just to notice that and realize like it's okay to say like, oh, I'm a bit wound up, like I've got a bit much on my mind, and then manage that with your stuff like your yin and your meditations and that kind of thing, or go for a walk. I can't even remember where that conversation started, but here we are.
It's really interesting because when you said about the book as well, so I used to do marketing. I'm not going to say the company because I did not have an enjoyable experience, and there's probably people listening and I didn't care. But like, same deal. I was literally in this like job where everyone was fighting to have this job. It was in social media. Like, great benefits, whatever. But I remember I went on a trip to Nepal. I read a book there that randomly, it was like a free book that was on the Audible thing. I was like, I'll just download it. I probably won't read it. And it was 10% Happier by Dan Harris.
Oh, yeah.
Literally, it changed my life because all he was talking about was being in a corporate job. He was a news presenter, I'm pretty sure.
Meltdown on live TV.
Meltdown, yeah. And it was meditation that changed his life. And I remember I finished reading it, and it was the last day before we were going to hit base camp, and I was so tired. I said to the guys, I was like, I need to go to sleep because I think altitude's actually getting to me. I've got a really bad headache. And they're like, yeah, go. It was 7:00 at night. And I was laying there, and I just finished the book. I put the book down. I was like, all right, and I'm ready to go to sleep. And I laid there for like 8 hours, literally, with my eyes open. I thought I'd fallen asleep. And I was like, am I dead? Have I killed myself? What is going on? But it was literally like silence. I literally meditated for like 8 hours without, I don't know if it was, I still to this day, I'm like, I don't know if it was actually like the altitude or something was happening. But literally, my alarm went off at like 5:00 because we had to get up early. And I was like, did I sleep? I didn't know what happened. I was like, did I sleep? Was I sleeping? I was like, no, because I looked out the window and I saw it was still dark. Like, no, I was awake. But I remember sitting there going, try to think of something. Think of a to-do list when you get home. Couldn't. I just couldn't. It was like my mind was just like, nah, just be here right now and just breathe. Because the other thing was, I started getting really scared because like my breath was getting really shallow because the higher you get, obviously your breath gets affected. So I was like, make sure you like breathe. Like, remember, learn how to breathe again. So then I woke up in the morning and the boys are like, oh, how'd you sleep? I'm like, I didn't. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I laid on that bed for like 8 hours staring at the ceiling. And they were just like, are you all right? I'm like, I don't know. And up until that point, it was like walking meditation for 7 hours a day. I came back and literally went into the office, looked around at every single person in that office, and I was like, what am I doing?
Fuck this, I'm out. Yeah.
Like, what are these people doing? Every single person, same thing. I had friends who gave themselves chronic fatigue because of the stress. Like, I was looking around going, this is not healthy. This level of stress for what? Making a billionaire richer. Sick.
Yeah.
Like, that's not enjoyable. That's not... And yeah, same. There was a moment where I was staring at the running tap water, filling up my water bottle, and I was just like staring at this tap. My friend walks past and she's like, "Are you all right?" And I literally turned to her and I was like, "I think I'm going to quit my job." And she was like, "Oh my gosh, she's officially lost it." She's done. Like, because up until that point I was like doing all these extreme things, and I just was like, no, this is not the point of life. Like, you were not
There's
put,
gotta be more.
there's more.
Yeah. I remember that feeling. distinctly, yeah.
I was like, I've experienced this world where I saw the most happiest people on the planet and they had nothing.
Yeah.
They had nothing, and still they found like joy in everything. Just a conversation. I was like, this is fucked. Like, this is actually not what I want to do. And same deal. Like, I'm still really good at masking stress. So good that I trick myself.
That you trick yourself.
I trick myself all the time.
Yeah.
Literally, I nearly had a meltdown the other day and I was like, what is going on? I was like, oh my God, you have been doing way too much. And like, my body just goes now. It's just like, yeah, no, we're good. And I don't even have symptoms where it's like, oh, I feel sick or this. I might get tired. But
you just get to the point of like,
I just get to a point and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to explode. And it's just like, well, how do I prevent that from happening when I'm not even aware that I'm like getting to that point?
I know what you mean. I'm the same. I've had years of trying to, and I still, it's almost like a, weekly bloody thing where I'm like, oh God, I've got to like peel it back and come back. But I think like just being aware of it, and you just, you slowly start to learn, like, are there maybe little things that you could maybe start to like to watch in yourself? Like, I know for me, like, as soon as my sleep starts to go like bad, that's where I'm like, oh shit, I'm on a downward spiral here. And then it's like, all right, what are the things I need to do but like, I've been working on that for 5 years. And I still feel like it's like I definitely haven't cracked the code, and I have done so much reading and research and listened to all the podcasts, and it's a challenge. I think also if you're that kind of personality where you enjoy, doing a lot of things, and you enjoy achieving stuff and pushing yourself and striving. I think that's why you're working for yourself, and same here. And I think, we've got to be extra careful because we're the kind of people that like, we get so much out of doing that kind of stuff, but it's not worth your health. So it's like, you got to find that balance. I had a good chat actually with Hannah, the acupuncturist, about that only yesterday, about like, because she's the same, she has built her own my voice is going. She's built her own business as well, and so had her sister, and they're the same. They're always, they'll have a quiet week and then they'll plan something else, and it's this constant. So we're that kind of personality, but it's like, at what point do we sit back and go, I'm content, I'm happy, I don't have to keep pushing and striving. I think that's a certain personality trait maybe where that's going to be a battle for us forever.
100%.
I said that to Ariel before you guys got here. I said, I think I just worked out that, because things just keep coming up in my life currently, that my plan of action has to be inaction right now for me. Like, so many situations in my life right now, it's like, I can't fucking fix anything from, like, my thing, as you know, is like, I'm going to tell you exactly how I'm feeling, or I'm going to tell you exactly what's going on and exactly where I'm at constantly. But it's been at the sacrifice of a lot of situations in my past, because it's like, I always had this idea in my head. It's like, I think of me holding a sword up going, the truth will heal all. It's like, no, Stefan, you fucking idiot. It will not. It will not heal all. You got to keep your mouth shut sometimes. Just because it's true to you doesn't mean that it's true to the situation you're currently in.
Yeah.
And I've learned that the hard way a lot. Something Stacey slaps me around with in the Kinesiologist. She's like, no, Stefan, what are you... Can't you see?
Hey, we're all learning. We're all trying to figure ourselves out.
But that's something every one of these lockdowns we've come out of, I've just felt like a fucking marble in a slingshot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and this time I was like, no, I'm not going to plan anything. I'm not going to do anything. My jaw, actually, an acupuncturist is fixing my jaw locked up just over a week ago. And an acupuncturist, he put all these needles in me. He goes, open your jaw, and open the whole way. And I was like,
that's so cool.
What is this? This is the first time I'd ever had it.
Cool.
Yeah. And I was like, of course, Chinese medicine, it's the only thing that ever helps me in those realms. But what was I saying? So coming into lockdown, out of lockdown, I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. And then this week, still stepping into it, I was like, I had to just accept the fact that there's so many factors outside of what I'm able to control right now that are going to stress me out.
You just gotta kind
And
of
I'm not
ride it
even,
out, don't
I'm
you?
being conscious of everything, and I'm saying no to things. I'm teaching less classes. I'm doing everything. And I'm like, I still feel like this. I was
Yeah.
like, cool, you just have to sit in it. In action, Stefan. Don't do a thing about it, and
Just ride it out.
just ride it out.
Yeah, I've had the same this week.
Yeah.
Like, done everything I thought I could do to manage it, and just feeling the most stressed I've felt in months. And
Yeah.
it's like, I think it is a bit of that, the coming out of lockdown, and it's like, I don't know, you go from doing, I mean, you were still teaching a bit, and I was
Yeah,
as
I
well, I
was
was still
a little
doing a
bit.
bit, but then it's just, you literally just slingshot straight back in, and it's like, it's really jarring. And I think
Yeah.
because we've been in and out, like so many times, I don't know, I don't think that's natural for a human to have to, like, you know, go down to nothing and then ramp it back up and then go down to, like, it's,
And then,
it's exhausting. And I think, you just got to go easy on yourself. And I think we just
Yeah.
have to go, all right, not feeling amazing this week, doing all the things I can do, and then full stop, just got to ride it out. Like sometimes, like, we can have all the tools, like we can have all the meditations we can do, all the breathing work that we can do, minimize, you know, as much as we can. Sometimes the feelings are just, the anxiety and the stress is just going to be there. That's definitely something I've learned recently.
Like the back of, like, awareness of present experience with acceptance. It's like, I read that in Bernie Clark's book.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I read that, I was like,
Yeah, there
So
has to be that.
it has to be acceptance.
Otherwise, it's just this constant, like, you know, searching and trying to, like, fix yourself and trying to, like, sort shit out. It's
Yeah.
like, at what point do we just go,
It is what
it
it
is
is.
what it is,
Yeah.
and you can still,
So-
like, is that what you've got tattooed?
That came up yesterday
That's
as well,
it.
didn't
Yeah.
it?
I tell you, literally, people say things and I'm just like, and they're like, put the fucking arm away. I'm like, that's why it's there.
That's what my right arm's for.
The story behind the tattoo is the dumbest thing, though. My friend challenged me at the end of last year. This is complete sidetrack. Challenged me to do a 256k bike ride from Echuca to Geelong in a day, and I'd never ridden a bike before in my life, right? And so this is what I mean. I was doing
Wow.
really crazy, stupid shit, and then I was like, I need to quit my job. But he said it, and he's a cyclist. Like, he's literally almost a pro cyclist. And he said it to me. He's like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if we did that? And I'm like, yeah, it would be funny. Let's do it. He's like, you've never ridden a bike before. We can't. I'm like, watch me. Don't you dare tell me I can't, because I would do it 2 times over. So we did it, and the whole time, I actually enjoyed it up until it got to midday and it was really hot because we did it in November. And then it just got to this point where I was like, what the fuck? Again, though, another point where I was in my head for like 16 and a half hours. Literally, I had to be nice to myself. I was like, you've got to be your own best friend right now. You cannot talk to yourself like your own worst enemy, because this is going to be 10 times harder than if you just try to, like, be positive. So I was doing bodily check-ins. I was like, legs, how we going? Cool, we're still there. Sweet.
awesome.
Arms, how you got? Sweet. Back, not that great, but like we'll be fine. Literally. And I did that in Nepal as well, like doing these just body check-ins. And it was so ridiculous to me, because I was like, if someone had a microphone in my head right now, they'd be like, fuck, she's cooked.
exhausted.
She's like, yeah. But it worked, because I was like, there's no room for me to shit on myself. I literally have to be on my own team right now. But then every now and then, my friend James, he'd be like, look over and be like, how you going? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And he's like, hey, it just is what it is. And he just kept saying it and saying it and saying it. And I was like, say it one more fucking time. I'm going to rip you off your bike. Anyway, the next day, or 2 days later, I was like, I need to get him back for this. So I was like, hey, do you want to go for coffee? And he was like, yeah, let's go. I ended up booking a tattoo for him, because I'm like, you're getting a tattoo for making me do this bike ride. He's like, what are we going to get? I'm like, we're going to get It Is What It Is. He was like, no, we're not. I'm like, yes, we are, because that's going to commemorate the trip. So that's the story behind the tattoo.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
But anyway, that was a really good segue into meditation as well, because that was another really, like, for me, the way I find flow states and meditation and that, I always find I'm super present and super aware of what I'm doing when I put myself in these really extreme situations, because it
That's
forces
interesting.
me
Yeah.
to actually, one, be fully present, but always being my own best friend.
Yeah.
Were you conscious of that before booking those in, or was it more like when you were in it and then on reflection being like, oh, that was actually
I think
what was going on?
in Nepal, I made a very, very big point, because up until that point, I'd been doing all this other stuff, but that was like my childhood dream. It was something I wrote on my bucket list when I was 7.
So cool.
And it wasn't up until I like got to one point in that trip and I looked up, and it was like my inner child in that moment woke up and was like, finally you did the thing you promised me we were going to do. And ever since that moment, that inner guidance has just been my guiding light. It's like my North Star. I'm just like, what do you want to do? That thing. All right, let's go do it. Because I know why I want to do it. But I made a point, like everybody else, there was 4 other guys that did the trip with me. They all had headphones in listening to music and stuff. And I was like, I didn't come all this way to listen to music or a podcast. Like, I'm here to actually be in this experience. And so I was like, nah, no music, like none. And there's nothing there. It's silent. The only thing you hear is the rocks under your feet. The yak bells when they're like coming up and down the mountain. There's no birds. There's not even birds chirping. There's no wind. There's nothing. So it's silence for 7.5 to 9 hours a day.
Standing like silent retreat, like a walking silent
literally
retreat.
And no one's talking either, because you can't, you're short of breath. So you're constantly having to check in with yourself to be like, am I actually okay? Because again, it's very easy for altitude to just creep up and you're not even aware because you're thinking of something else or and so it was literally like feeling the ground under my feet, like when things were getting hard, checking in with my body and being like, how you going? Like, are you good? Are you sweet? Yep, we're great. Literally, that's how the conversation was going. So then I came back and I started doing all these other things like that bike ride and these really physical challenges. And every single time I'm like, you've been here before. You've been in your own head for this long. And like having come out of like depression and all of that, where I was in my head, and I remember like I explored depths of my mind I wouldn't wish on my like worst enemy. So it was like I knew that end of the spectrum. I knew what it was like to absolutely hate yourself and like just talk negatively. Then to be on the other side, to be like, all right, this is like being like living with a roommate. And there's one roommate that's always going to be like, no, you shouldn't do that. Like the self-doubt, the fear, all that, they'll always be there. You live with them. But it's like, which one are you going to listen to? Who's louder? Like, because they're both always going to be living there, but you've just got to manage which one you're going to actually turn the volume up on. And those experiences teach me that every single time. Because that one's always there, but it's like, no, I don't need to listen to you. I've been here, I've done this. I'm going to like do this because this actually benefits me. How do we get started? I don't even know how to do it.
That's a big
Meditation.
life lesson.
Meditation, yeah. So pay attention to what you tell yourself.
No, it is totally important. Like, I just had a thought then of like when I saw the kinesiologist for the first time up in Melbourne in Hawthorne, and at that point, being so like disconnected from myself, just like tunnel vision, working my ass off, partying, like not looking after myself, and this kinesiologist started asking some questions around like what I was like, what my inner voice or inner critic was telling me, and I'd never like thought about it before, and I thought I was quite a positive person, and like all my mates would have said like, Jess is super positive and optimistic, and she asked this question and I just burst into tears, and I remember being like, oh my god, I have constant negative thoughts about myself and judgments about myself and about other people. Like it was almost this like constant train of thought, and meditation has helped so much with that. And I think a lot of people aren't even aware that that's what's going on, but you also like, I can't even talking about it now, I'm like, shit, that was 5 years ago. Like I'm so much more aware, and that it still happens, as you said, it's always going to be there in some element, but it's almost like rationalizing with it and going, well, that's unhelpful. But I think the more you meditate, like even within the first like 6 months of meditating, I noticed such a difference with that negative train of thought, and the judgments of that constant sort of like judgment of yourself and of other people started to dissipate and started to sort of like, and then now it feels like, I mean, it's definitely still there in some component, but it's nowhere near what it was.
Well, that's the thing, like you're born with that negativity bias, like that's always there because it's a protection mechanism. Like fear never goes away. Everybody says to me like, oh, you're not afraid of anything. I'm like, that's absolute horseshit. Like of course I'm fucking scared of things. Like speaking to new people terrifies me, but why do I do it? Because I know I'm always going to gain something out of it. And I think when you let the fear stop you from that, or let it rob you the opportunity to grow, that's where you miss out.
Which a lot of people do. Like a lot of people, maybe not even consciously.
No.
It just controls them, which it did for me for a long time. I can think of friends that Absolutely, it controls the way they live their life, and like that's no way to live.
I'm
No.
going through this now.
You're always
No.
going
You'll
through
get
everything.
No, the fear thing, for real. I didn't think I was afraid of things that, like, as like the teaching thing, like we were saying before, yes, and stepping into situations like music and performing. Another thing on meditation, I really noticed, actually I'll get to that in a sec, but the fear and everything, it's the last 2 weeks I've actually realised how afraid I am of failing. Like I had no fucking idea. Like I didn't think I was afraid of it at all. I was like, no, you've done all these things before, you know how to step forward in them, you know how to perform, you know how to write music, you know how to be open and honest with people, like all that ties together. And it's like, yeah, you've just slowly, I used drugs for a long time to slowly just put those little fires out and tiptoe over it, but not actually deal with any of the fear, just push it to the side for long enough to get to the other side and then melt down in the middle of it. I used to get throat infections before nearly every show that I played.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't expressing myself fully. And I used to get... I stopped plumbing originally because a doctor said to me, he looked at me, he's like, what are you fucking doing? He's like, you are in here every 3 or 4 weeks. He's like, I'm constantly writing you out scripts of antibiotics. I took so many fucking antibiotics because I was so afraid and I had no idea. And then it's taken however long it's been now, last 7 months of not taking any type of drugs or smoking any type of weed or drinking any alcohol to be like, and seeing professionals, kinesiologists, predominantly, only actually. And then last week, I am always going through something. Last week, I was like, fuck, I'm so scared of failing. I had no idea. It fully becomes, and because we have so many things in our life that distract us from the fact that we're afraid. Like talking to new people. Everyone's always got a drink in their hand. And it's really, and there's nothing wrong with that if you just enjoy doing your thing, but really, we all use it just to fit in, to be able to have easier conversations with people. We're distracted constantly by our phones. Work, if we're unhappy there, it's a means to an end. It's I'm buying this house, or I'm fucking getting this car, or I just have to do it for this many more weeks before I'll be able to do X, Y, and Z. And not even realizing that Andrew said something really interesting to me. I was telling him about, Andrew's the kinesiologist, Andrew Birchall, and he said, he's like, the most important thing he thought to show children. I told him about this and I said, look, aimed at a younger demographic. It's for everyone, but when we were teenagers or that younger age group, it was like the hardest time for us. He's like, teach people how to use money correctly. That's why I was so interested in so many things that Matt Wally said yesterday. He's like, most of the world is in survival mode. They're stuck in their root chakra. They don't have any of their foundations built. So they're never able to move up into a higher frequency because they're constantly worried whether they're going to have a roof over their head, whether they're going to be able to eat dinner tonight, whether they're going to have enough money left in their bank account next week. So everybody's stuck in survival mode, and then everybody's just stuck using distractions to fucking not acknowledge the fact that they're terrified of even fucking being able to survive or be alive.
Go.
No, you go.
Oh no, I was just going to add to that though as well. I think there's this really big illusion of what we're supposed to have as well.
Absolutely.
So it's like this false, like, I don't know what you want to call it, conception or image of like, in order to be successful, I have to have X, Y, and Z. In order to have X, Y, and Z, I need to have this much money, when it's like, you actually don't need that much.
You need nothing.
Everyone needs to go to Nepal, see?
Yeah.
But yeah, 100%. We're afraid of like something like that, but it's like, I just don't even think people don't go even further than that and be like, well, is this my truth? Like, is this actually what I want? If it is, great. Find a way to like work through that and get there. But there's just too much bullshit around us, and we're fed so much shit constantly. Like, this is the thing you need to be happy. Like, it's this. It's like this shiny thing over here, and it's like, it's actually not. But
So,
we're all just like gravitating towards that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sorry, I went to cut you off.
No,
But then like, it's like that's entangled in the survival mode
Yeah.
thing. And then people, it's so fucked up, because then it's like, how do you find your truth if you're afraid of even eating your next meal?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You meditate. And
Yeah,
you start
that
doing,
helps.
yeah.
What about when you think about like what's at the root of so when you think about fear of failure
Yes.
and failing, like what's at the root of that? Like,
I think I don't have a very high self-worth, and I think I look at my external things and value myself based on what I'm able to do outside of myself.
Yeah. That's a big realisation to come to, though.
Ariel helped me get there the other day.
Massive, mate. And, like, no wonder, like you say, you're, like, going through different shit every week. Like, you are in the thick of, like, working yourself out, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that, yeah. Like, I feel like I've been through that many different, like, cycles of, you know, reading a certain book or having something come up with a kinesiologist and then, you know, going and doing the work on it. And sometimes it can be, you know, it can take months or years of, like, processing and... Because, like, becoming aware of something like that, if you didn't know that about yourself, that's a pretty big thing to, like,
Yeah, I didn't.
to start thinking about and go, well, fuck, like, how do I work with it, you know?
Yeah.
How can I keep moving forward and be content with my life?
Absolutely. And it's funny, it's the reason why I didn't pursue music anymore, and it's the reason why I left the last band, because I was very aware that I was identifying myself with these things that I was doing, but I just had no idea the depth of it, and I had no idea how to stop it. And the weird part is, I got really good at playing or dancing in this space that I created that wasn't real, because I was listening to all the podcasts, I was reading all the books, I was constantly fucking forgetting everything because I was high all the time, and I was like, oh, this helps me now today. I don't remember it next week. I don't know how to utilize it, and because you're so stuck in that fear and you don't even know it's there, you're like, I can't move through it, or you think you move through it, but really you're just walking around in circles. I mean, you walk around in circles and getting a little bit further. You have to. It just takes a lot longer.
Yeah.
But that's where I came back to that inaction thing. I'm like, that's the only thing I know how to do right now is like just fucking stand still. And
Maybe that's exactly what you need to do.
Yeah,
and even
trying.
like reading all the books and like doing all the like listening to all the stuff. Sometimes, I don't know, I go through phases of getting like, really into that stuff, and then I'm like, at what point am I going to just sit back and let it sink? Like, there has to be a moment of processing, and that could be months. That could be, you know, and giving yourself that time to actually really let it integrate and sink in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's the other point. It's like knowledge is power, 100%. But it's fucking useless if you don't A, let it process, and then B, action it. Yeah. Like, you can read all the books in the world. You can listen to every single Joe Rogan podcast or this podcast. It's not going to do anything if A, you don't know why you're trying to do what you want to do. B, how that tool, that podcast, that whatever actually fits into you moving towards that. And C, like, you can only consume so much before it all just becomes noise again in an already really noisy world. Mm-hmm. So then it's like I have to sort through all this information. 90% of it is probably not even going to be really relevant to what I need right now. Yeah. But we just hold on to it. We don't do anything with it. And we just keep consuming. And then it gets to a point where it's like, I'm overwhelmed. I've got 7 books I've opened and I've read 4 pages from each. I've got 3 unlistened podcasts. Mm-hmm. And then you feel like a failure. Yeah. Because it's like, I can't even do that. How am I going to succeed? And then the like narrative just starts going and going and going. Like, I read a thing the other day, and it was like, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, on average, a relatively like healthy mind has 70,000 thoughts every single day from the moment you wake up. 40% of those thoughts tend to be negative. So if you wake up and the first thing you tell yourself is, I hate Mondays, what's the next thing? I hate Mondays. I hate my job. I hate this, and it's just this negativity spiral. And it's like, if you don't catch yourself whilst you're in that spiral and cut the cord and go, hang on, how about I just say one thing I'm grateful for and try to just divert the train of thought or the train in general, of course you're going to have a shit Monday. Of course you're going to hate Mondays. Of course you're going to hate your job. Like, that's something as well. Like, the last few days have been waking up going, oh, this is... I'm like, nope, don't say it. Like, just think something else. Think of like one thing you're grateful for. And it doesn't shift my mood completely. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so happy. But then it's like, it gets me thinking about something else where I'm like, oh yeah, like at least I have a bed that I've woken up in. At least this, at least that. Oh, people. And then it just starts to spiral again. That takes practice. That's really fucking hard.
It's really hard.
Yeah, it's
very... The awareness of it is the first, like, that can take people, and this is where meditation's obviously so helpful. Yeah. Is that you do start to notice the thoughts. And that is like, that's pivotal for so many people. And that can take a long time for some people. Like, I know people who've been meditating for, you know, a year, and they still haven't gotten to the point that they're able to, like, notice when their mind's being negative, or notice what kind of thoughts they're having. Like, that is a huge skill in itself to be able to do that. I reckon that took me years, like literally years of meditating to finally, and it was like a penny drop. It was like, oh, I get it now. Like, I can watch the thoughts and not have them control every moment. Like, you can just sort of watch them. But I think too, it's interesting to, like, I love all the science and like the learning about like the neuroplasticity of the brain. And so what you're talking about, where you're like, you know, you wake up and you might start having negative thoughts, but noticing that and going, all right, I'm gonna write down 3 things I'm grateful for, and that you are actually helping your brain to find a new pattern. So it's like the more you do that, so it's not just something to do to make you feel better in that day. It's like, it's actually, if you keep making those new grooves in the brain, you are reprogramming. And I think, I get a bit impatient of like, oh, I've been meditating for ages now, like, why isn't it? But then I think back to, like, I read back on some journals I kept, like, when I did my yoga teacher training. Holy shit. And that was only like 3.5, 4 years ago. And you read back on stuff and you're like, I have come so far. And I don't think I've said that since, like, being on this journey of, like, you know, figuring myself out, but actually acknowledging that, like, holy shit, like, it's working. Like, I'm moving in the right direction. But I think it's important too to get to a point that you go, it's all good now. Like, that acceptance has got to be, because otherwise, like, are we going to be doing this for 30 years? You know, like, I worry that at what point are we going to be content? It's one thing to be like wanting to learn more about yourself and, you know, research different things and try different meditation practices. And sometimes I get to a point that I'm like, I think I need to just sit back for a bit and actually just be happy and not feel the need to read more self-help books. And
so,
you know, it's
100%. I asked a question yesterday to our guest Adam, and I said, what do you think comes first, growth or happiness? I'm going to ask you, what do you think comes first, growth or happiness?
Well,
the answer can be anything. Like, it doesn't have to be growth or happiness. But what do you think would, for you personally?
What comes first? Yeah, that's my instinct is to say growth. That, you know, initially I reckon in this whole journey I would have thought that, like, growth as a person would lead me to being happier. But then I kind of, if you take more of the approach of that acceptance, then you go, well, can the happiness come first?
Yeah.
And then once you find that happiness in yourself and that content feeling, then maybe the growth that you experience from that is actually enough.
Really great answer.
So
I don't know where that comes from.
No, but it gets people thinking, because I think
really
when you're in that constant growth mindset, I think it's great. I had to pull myself up on it when I did, like, say that 256k thing, because I was like, I can't do this forever. I can't keep doing these crazy extreme things
it all the time.
Yeah,
then you got to be careful about that too.
My adrenaline and cortisol levels were through the roof for 4 months. I literally was just like, for a whole 2.5 months, I was doing these activities for a YouTube series, right?
Gotcha.
So I was like, just one thing after, like, go, and I kept saying to myself,
nervous system would have just been like,
it was shot. It was literally like, I was flying a plane on a Saturday, and then on the Monday I was like going and doing this crazy bike ride. Like, it was fucked. Everybody was like, I don't know how you keep going. I'm like, I am just literally like running off pure adrenaline.
Did you crash it?
I did, yeah. But I kept telling myself, you just got to get through this. Like, do this thing, and then you'll take 2 weeks off, and then you'll chill and whatever. It was after I did all that I was like, I was not entirely happy that whole time. Like, it was fun doing all these cool extreme activities and meeting all these cool people, but that was where, because when someone asked me that on a podcast, I said the same thing. I was like, growth. I always find happiness in growth, because I'm becoming a better version of myself. I'm becoming, you know, I'm learning. I love learning. But then I was like, you actually do just get to a point where you can sit in that happiness. You don't have to always be growing. Sometimes it's nice to just chill and be like, wow, I've done a lot of growing in the past 4 months. I'm just going to take a break.
It's going to be never ending, and we're never going to be content.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think that's important to have good chats with Gemma about that kind of stuff. Our kinesiologist. Good chats about that, because she loves all the, you know, like, working yourself out and, like, analysing yourself. But then at what point do you get to just, to just sit back? Otherwise what's the point? Like, you're kind of just not happy with yourself. If you're just constantly. So I feel like I've probably at the moment are in more of a space of just, like, trying to just sit with, you know, that acceptance and just go, all right, trying to manage my anxiety, trying to manage my stress, but also just being a bit kinder to myself and kind of just going, all right, it's a hard week, we're coming out of lockdown. It's stressful. We're all like a lot of us are feeling that, and just go, fuck, it'll be better next week, you know.
Yeah.
And
Put
just
a movie on and order a pizza.
Yeah, pretty much. And you've got to have that kind of stuff. Like, you've definitely got to have that stuff.
Yeah. That's what I'm going to do tonight.
Well, I don't know. Do you have any more questions for Jess? Or?
Yeah, I actually do. So you said the wellness rooms at Good Folk.
Yeah.
And you told me the story about why you wanted. I just thought it was epic when you told me this because.
Oh God, now I'm gonna remember what I said.
No, like, so I'll summarize it for you.
Yeah.
So I think, where did you do teacher training? Was it over in Bali?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I might fuck this up, but you said basically that over in Bali, and it's true, there's so many little wellness hubs where you can go. I remember years ago I went to Bali and I don't love massages, to be honest. So by day 3 or day 4, I was like, get off me.
I'm the same. I hate people touching me. I was like,
yeah, so I get really ticklish, to be honest. Like, my kinesiologist had to touch, I'm getting under my armpits to press a muscle, and I was like, and he's like, sorry, mate, I'm gonna do that.
I'm actually super ticklish.
Yeah,
I understand.
But you said to me, I wanted to create something like that back here. And I just, ever since I started doing seeing a kinesiologist, I remember the first day I saw Stacey, I was a conniving little fucker. I could get away with anything. And I was just like, and it was unconscious. I didn't know, but I would lie to any psychologist, psychiatrist, anyone, and just because I was so afraid of telling them the truth. Within 5 minutes, Stacey had me crying on the bed because you can't fucking lie to her.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's really crazy.
So ever since I experienced that, I was like, this has to be everywhere. People just need to know about this. You don't have to do it forever. You don't even have to do it, but just know that it's an option, and it's a really fucking good option to just try. So when you said that to me and what you wanted to do there, I just was like, this is incredible that it's happening in Geelong.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing. So I don't know. I just wanted to ask when you were opening Good Folk, was it like this has to happen now, or was it something that just sort of fell into place, or how strong was that vision for you? Because I just think it's an awesome thing to have done. So like,
Thanks,
how
mate.
do you...
Yeah, it's been pretty cool. So we've got a couple of rooms in the back of Good Folk. So we've called the Business Remedy Lane. And we've got like a little reception area at the back. It's like an old garage that you come in the back, so it's like a little bit grungy, and deliberately created more of like a natural kind of feeling. Like a lot of those places are a bit more like pristine and really clean. I mean, it's clean. I shouldn't be saying that, but as in, it's not like a super neat looking kind of place. It's literally like an old garage, and it's got a really rustic kind of vibe, which, because we did a lot of the renovations in that place, it's naturally pretty rustic and not like super pristine. So we kind of played to that and used lots of timber and have tried to make it feel like a really homey kind of place. But yeah, it was luck that venue that we looked at and had our eye on, and it had the 2 rooms in the back. And I can remember my partner and I standing up there and thinking, like, because they were offices, had used them as offices, the previous tenants, and we're sort of spitballing different ideas. So prior to that, I hadn't necessarily envisaged that the next venue that I was going to rent would be the space that it could happen.
Yep.
Just financially, like I was like, I could, probably can't afford to take on like a huge space at the moment, but who knows down the track. But I had always had in the back of my mind, so since coming back from my teacher training in Bali, it's just amazing over there, like all the different sort of healing modalities that you can explore. And I'd never really done too much of that. Like, I'd done kinesiology and acupuncture, but nothing else really. And there's just so much on offer over there. And where I did my training at Radiantly Alive, they've got a handful of treatment rooms, and they've got all these really random modalities in there. I can't even, some of them, like one of them's like craniosacral therapy or something, kind of like kinesiology.
Yeah, Jem was talking about that one day.
Just through the skull. And then like all the different sound healings, all the different meditations, and then obviously having had such a good experience with kinesiology and Chinese medicine back in Melbourne, and all of that stuff was what had helped me figure out, that I wasn't on the path I needed to be on, and like I needed to, figure myself out a bit more, and also just get you back in your body. You know, for so many of us, we're like stuck on our phones and we're busy with so much shit. It's like, if you can, so the idea behind Remedy is like, it's this space where you come to you turn your phone off. It's like a real just reconnection back with yourself. It's kind of like a little relaxation kind of hub. And it's meant to, like, we've got, like, the music's more like, you know, Shavasana kind of music, like really chill kind of vibe. The lights are dimmed, there's candles on. Like, it's very much a full sensory kind of experience. It's not just like a massage bed in the corner. It's like, we've been very conscious about how we've created it all. But yeah, when we took on the lease, like, we got the lease for that space, and yeah, once Adam and I sort of talked it through a bit, and once I started fleshing it out, I was like, right, we're going to try and build this space. And it's obviously, I mean, for me, I feel very strongly about, like, it's about the people. It's about bringing in the right people. And so initially I was like, shit, I don't know, like, I don't really know that many people. That's not my, like, the wellness industry. It's not as in like massage or facials or anything like that. I didn't really know anyone in that space. So I was like, I don't know how, different to the yoga where I knew all the teachers I wanted to work with. I knew everyone. So it was a little different in that sense, that it was probably more effort and a bit more stress in a sense, because I was like, shit, actually this is not my industry. How am I gonna pull this all together? And then I started talking to Steph, Miles' partner Steph, and yeah, she's amazing, Steph Watson. So she came on board, and she was so, like, driven and keen and wanted to, like, get it happening, that I was like, all right, we're doing this, like, we're doing it. And so then we started putting some word out, trying to sort of like try and meet with the right people. And then meeting Gemma. I can remember when I first met Gem. So she's our kinesiologist, and she's great. She's got a background, she's a psychologist is her background, her studies, and then she's done like embodiment sort of training as well, tantric embodiment stuff. So she's got a really different approach with how she does kinesiology. But yeah, when I met her, I was like, great, she's going to be great. Like, and it all started piecing together, and then met the other couple of girls, and it all started to feel right. And I'm very much like a feeling person. Like, if it's, I always go, like, try and go with that real gut instinct kind of thing. And once they all started coming together, and we're like, oh, this is amazing. Like, everyone got along really well, and they all had a really similar ethos and vision with the way that they, you know, wanted to work with their clients. And really helping people to have this space where they can really switch off, which I think is really hard in, obviously yoga is that opportunity as well. But for me, like, the things that have worked for me, it's been so cool to just bring that all into one space, and give people, the opportunity to experience some different kind of stuff. And even the massage that we offer it's different, and people sort of don't really understand until they come and have one, and they come out and they're like, the amount of people that we have had say to us, that is the best massage experience I've ever had. Like, we've got women that have, like, been to Bali every year for 10 years, and they're like, that is the best massage experience I've ever. Yeah. I sound like I'm, like, totally pumping up the girls' tyres now, but they are all incredible. They've all been doing it for, like, 8-10 years kind of thing, like, long time. And they just have this extra special care for people. And I think when you give people that, it's the same with being a yoga teacher. If you really give people all of your energy, and, you know, you give them the space and you really hold them, and not everyone has the ability to do that, but like the girls that we've got working at Remedy, like, they've all got that ability to really make people feel really safe and nurtured. And then anything can happen, you know, when you let people really drop into that space. We've got sound healing has been recorded by Phoebe up in Melbourne, and so that plays, like, people have the option to play a sound bath while they're in, like, a massage. Which is so cool. I think there's a few other places that do that, but Phoebe's amazing.
She does so much really cool.
And people just rave about that. And then so it's been a journey. That was way more of a job than I was like, I'll just start this, you know, side business, and that ended up being a huge task. Even just the renovations, like, God, I've learnt so much about, like I was saying before, the sanding. Like, I would have spent nearly a week just like sanding timber and sealing timber, and I was on like a concrete grinder. I like ground all of our concrete. It took me days. It was funny. Adam and I, my partner and I, have definitely learnt, like, we definitely bit off way more than we could chew. and because Good Folk we were under pressure to like get it finished so that we could reopen when the state reopened last year. So this was like November. So we're under this like really strong time frame of like, fuck, we've got to get this done. And then Remedy was the same. It turned into like just this huge job that we didn't really, because neither of us are tradies. So we're like, yeah, we'll be able to do that. Oh yeah, we'll put a new bathroom in, no worries. Did it all ourselves. But yeah, so we've been open in there since the end of May. And I just love being at Remedy. Like I work on the reception sometimes and check people in and out, and it's just like to watch some people, the way they come in and they're you know, hunched over and they're on their phones and they're, you know, you can just see the tension in their bodies, and some of them will talk about that, and then they come out and it's so amazing to like, I just love that part of the work that we're doing, is to just see that visible difference in people when they come out and they sit down, and you can just see the tension is literally just, it's like they've just like shaked it all out of their body, and they sit, and we've got like nice tea and they can like hang out and read books and stuff, so it's like a little chill out kind of space afterwards. But yeah, it's been very cool, and I mean we've only been open for 3 months I think, and we've been locked down probably like 3 or 4 times, so we haven't really like had a good run on with things. But it's on reflection, I haven't really fully thought about it, but on reflection it is a very special place to have created, and I really hope that we can just get more and more people in to experience that sort of stuff, because I think a lot of us think that sort of stuff is indulgent. I definitely did for a long time. I like, you know, to go and get a massage or a facial, like I reckon before I opened Remedy I think I'd had like 2 facials in my life, because I was like, wouldn't treat myself to that kind of thing. But it really is, I mean, self-care is obviously a word that's like hugely overused.
It's a buzzword.
It is a buzzword, but I think that taking care of yourself, there's nothing bad about taking care of yourself.
No.
And if you don't, like I think that's what I reflect on, is like when I wasn't looking after myself and I just ran myself into the ground, then you're no good to anyone.
No.
You know, so you've got to learn the things that you need in your week or in your month to keep yourself from not getting, you know, too stressed or too burnt out.
Yeah.
So hopefully people come and experience it.
Yeah. I've got to say it was really good last time I taught yin there. I taught, I think it was a flow or mellow in the morning and yin, and just having Steph and Jem in there in between.
Isn't it so nice?
It was so lovely, because normally you teach and there's no one else in between, which is fine, you just do your thing. But having 2 people, like it just felt like it's
like a little community.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
it's really cool. I was like, oh my God, what are you guys doing? And we're just all chatting. I was like, oh, I've got to be careful, I talk too much.
Oh, don't worry, they love the chat.
No, they did. They loved the chat. It was good.
Yeah.
We all hung out. Oh.
I don't know if I answered that how I answered it last time. I feel like I went around in a couple of circles, but we got there.
No, that was we got exactly where we needed to be.
Okay, good.
Did you have anything else that you would
No,
like
I just wanted to say like what you're doing. I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like the vision, just how you even started it by just taking a chance and being like, let's just run with this. We've got no idea how to install bathrooms. We don't know how to do any of this. Let's just do it. I love that, and that's why I love like speaking to people, because we obviously, this is the first time we've really sat down and chatted. But like, I just love hearing stories like that, because I'm like, you are someone who opens the floodgates for other people to go, just do it. If you're passionate about this, if the intention's pure and you really want to, just go. You'll figure it out along the way. So
you do,
yeah, I think it's awesome what you're doing and how far you've come. And
Thanks, man. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I was super nervous, but that was actually...
How do you feel now?
No, I feel good. It was really nice to chat.
I'm still really nervous too. So
You're still nervous?
Every time he's like, I'm shitting myself. I'm like, you've done this 6 times now.
I actually felt pretty good today. I was like,
I'm not very scary.
No, you're not at all. I'm like, I've spoken to Jess heaps of times. This is fine.
No, it was great. Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you, for coming on and saying yes to this. And
Yeah.
we'll see you back here next week.
Great.